Falcons owner Arthur Blank has weighed in. What does it mean for Arthur Smith's job security moving forward?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. So if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. And of course, I am joined by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta to wrap up this week. We're going to talk keys to victory. We're going to talk about Arthur Smith on the hot seat, what this team should or could look like with Taylor Heinicke at the helm. All that is in store for you on today's episode. But first, I want to say I appreciate each and every one of you that is an everydayer that makes this illustrious podcast your first listen or first watch each and every day. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So, Jarvis, my friend, let's talk about, at least to me, the biggest sort of topic that's been going around over the past week, which is about Arthur Smith's job security, right? We heard some comments from Falcons owner Arthur Blank to Georgia Public Broadcasting this week, talking about that subject. And, you know, I thought Blank's words were pretty non-committal one way or the other, right? I feel like he knows from past experiences that no good comes out from saying things about a coach's job status being on the hot seat, whether you go back to 2003 with Dan Reeves, where he basically quit on the team with 3 games left because Blank told him, like, yeah, we're not bringing you back next year. And he was like, well, then what am I doing here right now? And then you go back to 2014 with Mike Smith and kind of needing to win a Week 17 game in against the Panthers to make the playoffs that year, but kind of news breaking the morning of the game or the day before, I can't remember the exact timeline, where Arthur Blank had already hired a searching firm for the next coach. And of course, the Falcons got obliterated in that game and wound up not making the playoffs. And Mike Smith was fired the next day. And so that's kind of my perspective on it. Like, I don't think Arthur Blank said anything one way or the other that could be misinterpreted, that could affect the product on the field. He just basically said, yeah, he's our guy right now. We'll see at the end of the season. Decisions will be made, whatever, right? But that's my perspective on it, right? I'm curious, Jarvis, to hear kind of your perspective on it. With all that in mind, you know, what do you feel like Arthur Smith's job status is right now today? Is he safe? Is he on a scorching hot seat? You know, is it all kind of dependent on what happens over the next 3 weeks? Where are you at with this?
I for one believe that I don't believe like he's on the scorching hot seat. Now, I never try to operate in extremes for me. Like, let me just say that, because there are some things that I feel like, and I even came to this realization the other day. I was thinking to myself, I was just like, all right, I've been kind of calling out some things as far that I've seen from my football eye, you know, and I'm just that I've been recognizing. I'm just like, man, I don't know if I like how you're using Kyle Pitts in this offense, or man, I don't know if you should be, you know, throwing the ball this much in these particular conditions, or I don't know if this game plan is a little bit too safe, you know, given the weather conditions and all that stuff. So I came to the realization. I was like, well, you know, for the first couple of years, I kind of defended Arthur Smith from a play call standpoint. I always thought that he always kind of catered his play calling capabilities to what was he catered it to whatever was on the talent that was on the roster. And I was like, okay, coach got to do what he got to do. Got it. But this year, it seems like it's been a little different for me. And I'm starting to feel like, okay, this guy should not necessarily be coaching for his job, but he should be evaluated and look at the whole sum of it, the whole sum of his parts, right? Like, he should be looked at in totality. and not necessarily be coaching for his job for 3 games. Because you know what? I feel like that's what Arthur Blank was saying, because, it's kind of hard to translate him nowadays. It feels like that whole Dan Quinn situation, because, they won a few games, towards the end of his regime, and then he decided to let him come back, and then they start the season 0-5, and then he gets fired mid-season. Like, well, why'd you bring him back if you're gonna fire him, 5 games in? So that tells me that you at least were thinking about it, and your gut told you that, more than likely this dude shouldn't come back. But I feel like this is the same type of situation, because at the end of the day, Dan Quinn earned some clout. He took that team to a Super Bowl in his second year, at the helm. And I feel like Arthur Blank was right in giving him that benefit of the doubt for the most part, right? But now, like, you in your 3rd season, these dudes told you out of their mouths, like, this was part of the plan. The 3rd year, we're going to be able to compete once we get the salary cap situation. That's a whole nother conversation. I don't really agree with that. But, teams turning around all the time in the NFL. But they're quote unquote competing, keeping games within 1 score, even though you look terrible doing it, or losing to a 1-12 team. Is that competitive? Was that a competitive football game? So putting it all on 3 games, I really feel like Arthur Blank is walking down a road that he doesn't want to travel down, because at the end of the day, man, you got to make the right decision and not kind of look at this thing from a 3-game standpoint and say, oh, he won 2 out of 3. Oh, I'm going to keep him around. No. Like, look at the whole entire season. Look at how this season turned out. This is a season where they want to be, quote unquote, hard evaluated. Like, hey, we're trying to go to the playoffs. We're trying to win a division. But that just hasn't been the case.
Yeah. I was looking up the numbers the other day, and I don't remember exactly what they were, but I think at one point this season, the Falcons were like 4-1 in 1-score ball games. And I feel like now they're like 4-5. So it's like they've lost like 4 straight of those sort of 1-score ball games. And that's not a good sign, I think, for the team sort of trending in the right direction. Because that for me was a big reason why I was bought into Arthur Smith in this regime and their vision after last year, because I felt like the team got better over the course of the season. And so going into this year, I thought the team was going to get better over the course of the season. And it did seem like, coming out of the bye week, like it seemed like they were on that sort of trajectory. And then again, I personally blame the turf at MetLife for sort of the turf monster getting them a little bit off track by basically wrecking their O-line and D-line with injuries and whatnot. But you got to be able to overcome even turf monsters in today's NFL. So that is, I think, why it feels like, maybe to some people that, we spent or at least I spent a good chunk of the season defending Arthur Smith. And now it's just kind of like, okay, well, that's over now. We'll see what happens. So I don't know quite what Arthur Smith's job status is. Like, to me, it's kind of a toss up. I think there's a lot of folks that think it's like, there's no chance he's coming back next year. And I think those people are wrong. There's probably people that think he's definitely coming back, and I'm like, I still feel like that it's somewhere in the middle, I think, and we'll find out in a couple of weeks. And I do think how the team finishes the season will play a part in it. And I think you make great points, Jarvis, that it shouldn't be just solely about these last 3 games, but it may wind up just being about these last 3 games.
Can I say something else that bothers me too? Like, The Athletic, I think it was Jeff Schultz wrote the report. I like Jeff. Jeff's my guy. He wrote a report talking about how Arthur Blank is at an age where he doesn't want to go through another firing of a coach. And I'm sitting up here like, why not? Isn't that the job? Aren't you the owner? Don't you make those final decisions? Because here's the thing. If you're getting up to a point where you want to be connected with folks. And I even remember something else that stood out to me. In that GPP interview, he was talking about how, he has a great family and all that stuff. I was like, to be honest with you, I don't care. Can you coach football? And I think that one of my friend of mine who hosts a show on 929 The Game, the local radio station here in Atlanta, he said, yeah, Desmond Ridder is such a great guy. I don't care. I don't care. I maybe call me a bad person or whatever, but I don't care how good people are. Like, can you play football? Can you coach football? And are you being productive? Are you winning football games? And that's what it should boil down to. I understand it makes it better when you like the person, or you will invite them to your house, or hey, I will let Desmond Ridder date my daughter, or whatever. And I don't care. I don't care. Like, first of all, my daughters are not old enough to date anyway. But anyway. But I'm just saying, like, I don't care. Like, we shouldn't be talking. I hate when that comes up. We're talking about, oh yeah, he's a great guy. I don't care. Like, can the dude play football? And I think that this Falcons team has done a little bit too much of that because they've passed on so many players because of questionable backgrounds. Like, ever since Michael Vick, we already know what it is, the Falcons filter. Like, it's been documented. Like, we've looked at it, and they just, and I think you shouldn't be operating like that. Like, we're at a point now where you've gotten far enough away from that you should be saying, okay, regardless of how I feel about the person, what has he done? And if you sit there and lay it all out about what Arthur Smith has done, or lay it all out about what Desmond Ridder has done,
yeah.
Well, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Like, this is there. It's right there. It's right there.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we'll just leave that conversation aside, and we'll see what's what with this upcoming matchup against the Colts. Whether Arthur Smith or Taylor Heinicke can put their best foot forward this weekend against the Colts, and we'll talk with Jarvis about some of those keys to victory if the Falcons want to sort of get back in the win column on Sunday. But first, guys, you can't root for your beloved Atlanta Falcons on a Sunday on an empty stomach, and that's where DoorDash comes in, right? If the Falcons are winning, you can order something to celebrate. If the Falcons are losing, you can order that pick me up. Or I know some folks got opposite. They want the Falcons to lose so they can get that better draft pick. So maybe if the Falcons lose, you can order something to celebrate. And if they win, you can order that pick me up, depending on what your status is. DoorDash has all your favorites: restaurants, stores, retail, grocery. It's all on the app, and you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and use code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget that code LOCKED23, LOCKED 23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. So, as I said, I know some people are checked out on the season and want the team to lose. We get it, Personally, I think, for all the people that comment every single day, like, they need to be losing. It's like, all right, we get it. Like, cool, man. Gotcha. Anyway, the rest of us are going to talk about, what reality is, which is the team is going to try to win the game. Whether they actually achieve it is certainly the big question. And so we'll get into that in a second. But before we get there, I should plug the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel, where you can get all that insight into not only the NFL, but NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, all the biggest stories around all the leagues, national shows, local experts, all on one 24/7 streaming platform, the first of its kind at Locked On Sports Today. And of course, you get the same thing with a more local fare on the 24/7 streaming channel for Locked On Sports Atlanta. There's a good chance that if you tune in right now, you'll probably see my face or Jarvis's face on your screens as well. So go check that out as well. But Jarvis, let's talk this weekend's action between the Falcons and Colts. What are sort of your keys to victory for the Falcons to beat the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday?
I think is to be able to get healthy. I think starting with the offensive line, like you mentioned earlier, how, David Onyemata and Caleb McGarrett still haven't practiced. The good thing, the other side of that is Chris Lindstrom did and Drew Dahlman did on Wednesday. So that's a good sign. I think, and then if you get some of those guys back to be able to like it's the same old song, man. They got to be able to run the football. You got to have some balance, and I'm interested to see how Arthur Smith calls plays. Not from necessarily from a scheme standpoint, but is he going to trust Taylor Heinicke? Because I was not impressed at all when Taylor Heinicke filled in for Desmond Ridder in those couple of games. So because I thought that, hey, the dude was all about getting the ball out of his hands and making sure he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. And I thought that, playing like that in today's NFL, which favors you throwing the football, I really feel like that can really hamper an offense, and then you become predictable. And we know that Arthur Smith doesn't like to be that way, but it seems like he kind of, with Taylor Heinicke going into that lineup the last time around, it seemed like he was okay in that particular realm. So I think that, being able, so hopefully they can be able to run the football and take advantage of it from a play action standpoint, to be able to throw the football down the field and see if they can get Drake London a little bit more involved in the offense early on and not towards the end of the game when the game is almost out of hand and out of whack. So I think if they can establish the run, be able to take some shots down the field, trust the quarterback that you got on the field by letting them kind of slang it around a little bit, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get a win in this game. Because guess what? Gardner Minshew, he's a guy, he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but the dude is going to make plays. And they have one of the hottest teams in the NFL in the last month and a half or so. So you better get ready, because the Colts are coming.
Yeah. I feel like Gardner Minshew in a lot of ways is the player that a lot of people think Taylor Heinicke is, in at least the people that have a more favorable opinion of Heinicke in that regard. And it's like, I haven't seen that from Taylor Heinicke yet this year, but we'll see. So yeah, I'm with you on that. The last couple of games from Taylor Heinicke did not inspire a ton of confidence. You mentioned Drake London, right? We know he missed the Vikings game, and then he was kind of an afterthought in that Arizona game, because it seems like with Taylor Heinicke, the two receivers he has the best and strongest rapport with are Kadero Hodge and Scotty Miller, rather than Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And it's like, hey, you're not going to get me on Locked On Falcons complaining about Kadero Hodge and Scotty Miller. Two guys I enjoy on being on this roster.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's part of the brand here. But you do feel like maybe the offense would be a little bit better getting the ball into Kyle Pitts and Drake London's hands than it is in those two guys' hands. Just maybe,
just a little bit. And but you gotta look at it like this though. Like, the reason why I feel like that's the case, because he practiced with those guys. He gets reps with those guys. So he has that rapport with them, just like, for the most part, Desmond Ridder has a really good rapport with Drake London. He gonna find his boy. Those guys built a relationship off the field, and you can kind of see it transferred onto the field. So, but like you said though, like, get the ball to those cats, because because the likeliness of you scoring, it goes up when you're throwing it 5 and 8.
Yes,
that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, and I felt like there was progress with Ridder and Pitts over the course of the season. Obviously, it's kind of stalled the last couple of weeks. So that's fun. Kyle Pitts will be starting fresh with another quarterback next offseason. Yeah, man, this is great, man.
The inconsistencies, man. Like, the consistent inconsistence with this offense has been fascinating, right? Because you think about his rookie year playing with Matt Ryan, obviously on the downslope of his career, but that was his most productive season as a pro. Hey, and that's also a time where I felt like Arthur Smith trusted the quarterback to throw the football. So he's like, all right, we can't run the ball. All right, cool. We'll just throw it with Matt, who got 40, 50,000 yards in his career. So yeah, I know I can trust him. So, and then you go to Marcus Mariota, just, hey, we're going to run option and quarterback keeps, and maybe throw the ball to the tight end every now and then. And sometimes Marcus Mariota thought he was 6'9" instead of 6'6", or 7 foot instead of 6'6". So now you have Desperate, but and potentially going to it. So yeah, man, it's a lot of factors going into these last few games, and now I think now we're just literally just peeling off the Band-Aid and just really looking at everything and saying like, wow, this might be a reason why he might not be as productive as we thought we were going to be coming into the NFL. Or
it's definitely a factor.
Yeah, man, it could be. It just could be. It's common sense.
So, we'll keep the conversation going about this weekend's action. Some other things about this Colts matchup that jump out to Jarvis and myself, and we'll get into that. Maybe that's more talking about Kyle Pitts and what that's all about. But we'll break that down as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. And guys, I want to tell you about PrizePicks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And now that basketball season is here, it's even better, right? Because PrizePicks has their specials league, and that's where you can combine projections for different sports, different leagues, right? For example, you can combine NBA and NHL, NBA and NFL, 3 points made and touchdowns or something like that. That's all available in the specials league. And, if you have the right skills, then you can find a way to make $10 into $250 with PrizePicks. It's simple to play. Just pick 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats. It's just you versus projections, so you don't have to worry about what Jarvis picks, what I pick. It's just you versus the projections, and it's all why PrizePicks is number 1 in daily fantasy. And the more projections you make, the more money you can make, up to 25 times your money. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL in lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and promo code LOCKEDONNFL. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons, of course, got to plug the NFL Kickoff Live with Jarvis Davis, Taditra Batiste, and Kyle Krabs every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern across the entire Locked On Podcast Network. If you're subscribed to Locked On Falcons, you will get that at 2 p.m. Eastern live on your feed. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Falcons or your favorite other Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, on Sunday, Jarvis and I will be joined by Tanitra to do a postcast for this Falcons Colts game, and we'll give you the lowdown on this game immediately after the game. Always entertaining with the Atlanta Falcons.
I'll be there live, so if you wondering why I got a suit on or something like that, that's the reason why. I got to put my school clothes on when I go to the game. So.
There you go. So that is in store for you on Locked On Sports Atlanta immediately after kickoff. Of course, you can get the audio version of that on the Locked On Falcons podcast feed on your preferred podcast platform as well. So, Jarvis, we talked already a little bit about Taylor Heinicke. I think your point about getting healthy on the offensive line, I think, is key, because we know that this offense is a better offense when they are balanced. They haven't been able to be particularly balanced, I think, in a lot of ways, because their offensive line injuries and just, the backups, you give them credit. They have done their best to their abilities. We saw last year when you had some injuries, you kind of had a revolving door at that left guard spot. It didn't really matter who was, playing left guard for the Falcons. Their offensive line didn't skip a beat. That has not been the case this year, whether it's because the quality of depth is not as good, or you just had more injuries to more players this year, especially as of late. Again, that turf monster, man. One of the things, it's not going to be an issue next year when we play the Giants, because that's going to be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But in the future, if they don't get this turf situation fixed, when we do the schedule release in May, we got to figure out, like, okay, you're going to MetLife at this point in the season. The next 3 weeks, you're going to be beat up. So that's going to affect how your season goes in terms of that. So that's something that they got to figure out.
New York too, it's like a top market in United States of America. Like, why are we talking about them changing their turf? Like, come on, dude. Can you get some upgrade to stuff? Like, what's wrong with grass? Like, it's open air stadium. Like, you put some grass down, man. Stop playing around. Stop being cheap. Goodness gracious.
Yep. All right. So,
yeah.
What other things jump out to you, Jarvis, about this Colts matchup?
Well, I think when you think about like what on the defensive side of the football, there are with David Onyemata being out, obviously Grady Jarrett being out. It's like, all right, who's going to be the person to help stop the run? Because that was the ugly part of the game. Like, because for me, anytime somebody brings up the defense, quote unquote, losing the game last week, I was like, first of all, they didn't score a touchdown. And anytime your offensive coordinator is your head coach and your head coach is your offensive coordinator, you should never lose a game when your defense doesn't give up any touchdowns. Let me say that first. But I just think that, with Chuba Hubbard and those guys, they're getting that running game going. I felt like that was kind of tough to watch. That's kind of tough to watch when teams run the football on this defense, because we're used to them being so stout against it. And then we're used to them still being able to somehow hold it down in the red zone too, with guys like David Onyemata being out. So I'm kind of in a space where I'm be looking at that center of that defense. Okay, who's going to be the guy to kind of step up to say, hey, I know what happened last week, but we can't let that happen again, because you're going to be looking at a very bad situation if you're giving the Colts offense a two-way go and being able to run or pass on any down, regardless of down the distance. That is just a bad place to be in, especially on this defense.
I think that's fair. I'm looking to see more from Zach Harrison. I pointed out on this week's extended all 22 review that I thought he's been better as of late, down the stretch, and I think it's a sign of his progress. And I'm curious to see if he can continue that trend to close out the season. And
wait a minute, Aaron. Did you just say a defensive lineman is developing?
Yeah, I don't know what to deal with that information either, Jarvis. So it's crazy.
Man, oh my gosh, my mind is blown right now. You mean he didn't have to come in and just be amazingly talented and then just playoff talent and just get 12 sacks like that? Like, he's coming here and he's developed as the year has gone on. Wow, man. Yeah, so here's why I'm being like that. I don't know if you guys can tell or not. I'm being very petty right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been pounding the table for this dude ever since the season has started. Because to be honest with you, I wasn't real big on Ryan Nielsen when they first hired him. I was like, all right, okay, defensive line coach, never called plays before. I love Dean Pease and what he brought to the table. He just reminds me of a coach that I played for. So I kind of was drawn to that. But man, the job Ryan Nielsen has been doing, given the circumstances, losing your best defensive tackle and your second best defensive tackle has been out these past couple games, he's still been figuring it out. Imagine that concept. Regardless of injury, regardless of the circumstances, you still figuring out how to get it done. Ryan Nielsen has been doing that.
There you go. Well, we'll end it right there. Positive note. Not a whole lot of positives to talk about with the Atlanta Falcons, so I'm going to take my W's whenever I can get them, Jarvis. So there you go. Ryan Nielsen doing a great job. There you go. So, I don't know how much more positive things we'll be saying about the Falcons for the next 3 weeks, but, there's one thing that you can hang your hat on with Ryan Nielsen. No, I'm not even going to go there. Not even going to go there. We're just going to leave it there.
Please, no. We've got a couple minutes. Go ahead and say it, because I think you're thinking what I'm thinking.
Well, I'm sitting here going like, hey, Ryan Nielsen's doing a great job. Guess what? One of the downsides of Arthur Smith getting fired is you lose out on Ryan Nielsen. So.
I know. That would be so sad. I would be so sad because, man, when the last time we seen some defensive players get drafted and come in and be developed in year one? We haven't seen that. Even when Dan Quinn was the head coach, we haven't seen that. So it's just like, man, that would be so sad. And, man, be kind of similar to another situation. But Mr. Shanahan walked out of that door. And,
Okay. All right, Jarvis. You
I'm sorry. My bad.
Now everybody's gonna go cry in the car. Now because of you, Jarvis. Because of you.